Hey, welcome to the Two Dudes Talk Movies podcast, and we are finally on video. It's been, a year, I guess, of trying to get video and get posters and get a room and a proper podcast equipment.
But we're here.
Yeah, we're glad you guys can actually see our faces, so when we have a bad idea or a bad take, you can actually put a face on it and tell us about it.
But yeah, man, it's been fun. Our birthday's here.
And it's true, yes.
1 year of doing this. It's been fun.
I hope you guys have enjoyed it all around the world, wherever you're listening from. But I actually didn't even know it was our birthday until literally before we did this. But today we picked a classic, or else that's what people say. We're talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey, directed by Stanley Kubrick. Do you want to give us the cast, even though there's only... 5 people?
Yeah, it's a very small cast, but it stars Keir Dullea.
Yeah, it's a weird name. I don't know.
Dullea, Dullea, I'll say.
Dullea.
Gary.
He's not in anything else, I bet.
Probably not. Him, Gary Lockwood, William Sylvester, Daniel Richter, and Douglas Rain. And the film, directed by Stanley Kubrick, as Drew said, is about, to say the least, or on a very surface level, about astronauts going to space, and then they have this, I guess, artificial intelligent device named HAL 9000 that kind of disrupts the mission. They're going to Jupiter, and he's just kind of overriding the mission, and the trip just doesn't go as smoothly as anticipated.
Yeah, I think... I remember I was telling you before we started that when I watch it, I can only remember it by chapters, because really it is broken up in chapters, where it's shows the dawn of man, showing a bunch of apes kind of running around the desert.
Yeah, at the beginning of the first 20 minutes.
And then we did that, and I think something to mention would be I can't remember, it's the big black structures that appear throughout basically all of space, they're showing off everywhere, on the moon, later in the movie. But it starts with the dawn of man, and we see a bunch of apes, living their lives, just survival. And then we see a businessman on another spaceship, and that part of the movie is a little more towards giving us an idea of the operation that they're doing to kind of understand this extraterrestrial structure.
Right.
And then, like you said, a big portion of the movie, though, is the actual spaceship on its way to Jupiter, because I think they, according to their data or whatever, that the next extraterrestrial thing is on its way to Jupiter.
Right.
And so they're basically meeting it there to kind of analyze it. But yeah, the AI kind of screws everything up. And I guess I'll start, because there's a lot to talk about. This is probably one of the most confusing movies I've ever watched. It has so much stuff in it, but sometimes nothing in it.
It feels like it's a bunch of B-roll that there's I know you told me earlier, the movie's about 120, 140 minutes. Yeah, 140, 2 hours, 120, 140 minutes, but only 40 minutes of it is actual dialogue.
Yeah.
Which just feels the movie already feels long in general.
Yeah.
It's only not only 2.5, but it is 2.5 hours, but feels like you're watching it forever. And I was waiting for it to go off, but yeah.
What'd you think overall now that you're talking about what you thought of it?
Man, I could not wait for it to turn off. I watched it in sections. I fell asleep the first night I watched it. I had watched a bunch of movies that day anyway, and I watched it the day this was recorded for about an hour, and I watched it in segments throughout the day. I was drained while I kept checking to see how much time was left. I'm like, bro, I cannot wait for this to be over, because there's nothing really, you can't watch this the first time and be and be anticipating anything. It's just I'm confused the entire time. Like you said, this is one of the most confusing movies I've ever watched. And even after a little bit of research, I understand it more, but if I watched it again, I still wouldn't be able to connect the pieces as to how articles or videos relate back to it.
I can appreciate it because it's one of those things where it's probably the movie that is literally show it, don't tell us
Yeah.
information. It's probably one of the most like obvious movies when you say that phrase. But I can appreciate the fact that it has so many themes and stuff that you can interpret. So you can interpret it this way, another person can interpret it this way. It's all just nonsense to most people, but I can appreciate that it doesn't spoon feed you information and tell you that it goes one way. While I was watching it, I watched it on Friday. I tried to watch it on a Friday, fell asleep after the first like 40 minutes, and I tried to watch it on Saturday. I got a good amount of in. That was when I hit the AI part with Hal, so I was actually really gripped. And then I finished it on Sunday, and the movie, like if you watch it, like I can imagine watching it in one go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had time to like process the section I watched, and then but if I watched it all in one go, I'd be sitting there just like, what's going on? And a fun fact is that when they were screening this movie in 1968, a lot of people were walking out of the movie theater. A lot of people were like whispering to themselves, like, what is this? Like, what's going on? Which is fair, especially because at that point, movies were a lot more straightforward. Like, you knew exactly what was going on the entire time. Or this, it really tests you. And so in advertising, they basically made an advertisement to come to the movie high. So that was the whole ploy. Because honestly, if you were like on something, you came to watch this, you would either have a great time or the most horrific, like, panic ever, which I guess is cool. I guess what would you besides sci-fi, would you, in terms of genre, put this as like horror movie or more of like a I don't know.
I'd say just off no research, just off
your viewing.
Like
it's
alternative.
It's a mixture of a lot of things.
That's I wouldn't say horror. I'd say mystery.
Yeah, because I got a lot. Because Stanley Kubrick obviously directed The Shining, and so he has kind of a hand in horror. And he does. I think once it hits the Hal part, I think it does kind of become not psychological, but you're kind of claustrophobic, kind of horror. It's just a little bit like a horror, a little probably more unsettling.
I guess I wouldn't say horror. I get what you're saying though, but probably because it's not so like in your face about it. Also because like we're just getting a voice with it. Like there's no like he's not doing any subtle actions. I guess. I mean, I guess he is disrupting the trip. There's a bit like sabotaging the trip, but I don't know. Horror just seems so like mess with it.
And I think that, I mean, if we're gonna start off with like, let's first talk about you want to start off talking about the Dotted Man first and just kind of work our way kind of, because it's hard to talk about this movie like in one big thing. So putting pieces. Yeah. So basically, with the Dotted Man section of the movie, we basically just see just a bunch of monkeys, apes kind of surviving. We kind of see what it was like, and I think, and I didn't say this before yet, but the visuals in this movie, the visuals and the themes of this movie are probably the biggest thing that it's known for, because the visual effects, I think, are revolutionary and probably better, in my opinion, than 1977 Star Wars, which was 9 years later. But I think this movie had a bigger budget. It had, I think, I can't remember the budget.
Give me a fact check.
It was like around $10 million. That's probably wrong, but it was at today's time, it was $100 million in today's time.
Okay.
So like it was a big budget movie for the time, and I think their miniatures and the way they make spaceships look, it just looks so good, knowing that it was even before we even got on the moon. That's hard to think about, that this movie came out before we even got on the moon.
I was watching it, and the effects were really good. When he went through that, I'm kind of getting off topic, like into another section, but towards the end of it, when he was going through all those like light streams or whatever and going to the different universes.
I realized, I figured out how they did that.
How? Okay.
Yeah, I think that was like drone footage that just had like saturation and colors just turned up all the way.
Okay.
Because it looks like it's like going over like African horizons or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they just went hard on the color change, which it looks cool, but it's like, I feel like if they didn't show me as much, I wouldn't be able to I kind of lost a little bit of the space value to it, because I'm like, oh, those are just like earthly kind of, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and that kind of.
You ruined it for me though.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
You're already wishing that it was gonna be done anyway. So
Yeah. That movie was draining. Man, I've never wanted a movie to end quicker. I think
it's kind of demanding, and
that's not true. There's no one movie. But keep going.
But anyway, yeah. Back to the ape part. So we basically see them like feuding with another ape family, I guess, and then all of a sudden they wake up and this huge extraterrestrial black structure is in the middle of the desert, which visually that was pretty cool because it kind of is such a contrast to see like dry desert and then just this black structure out of nowhere. And the monkeys are like, they're very confused by it, but they're kind of like just touching it and everything. And I think it cuts the next scene. They find a bone of an animal that died, and then they start using that as weapons against the monkeys. And it shows like a big slow motion orchestral thing where they're destroying the thing. And I took it as it's showing the evolution of man. You finally figure out how to use weapons, and it's just kind of showing the beginning of that. Did I have to watch 30 minutes of monkeys fighting over a location? Not really. I didn't need to. Did you?
No. Just a bit of like and they started fighting like really. It took them a while. I mean, not like a while, but when the two monkey families met up, they're just screaming back and forth for what feels like 5 minutes. I'm sure it was shorter, just to get like that puddle of water. Yeah. And I don't know. Everything just took forever in this movie. Yeah. But
it was, and that basically is, and then it goes from the ape like throwing up the bone to it going into space. Yeah. Which
that was a good transition.
It was a good transition. I enjoyed it. I think that, for me at least, I just wasn't a fan about how the movie was paced. I think it was paced. It's hard. Well, because Stanley Kubrick is such a weird guy. I've said it multiple times before we started this, but he had like a 200 IQ, which is like super genius.
I wonder what mine is.
I don't want to know what mine is. I don't want to know mine in comparison to him. But yeah, I don't know. There's the way it's paced. It's like we just see, and I understand that when we get into space, it's like the seclusion and like the isolation and claustrophobia that is when you're in space. But at a certain point, we just don't have to see every little aspect of the, we don't need to see 4 minutes of a ship slowly approaching. And I was talking to somebody earlier about it, and I'm just like, accuracy starts to affect the entertainment value of a movie, because this movie is very accurate to how space travel is. I think that's why most people will watch Star Wars more than this movie, because while Star Wars isn't scientifically accurate to space, it's like the movie is probably one of the first Star Wars in 1977 is probably one of the most well-paced movies of all time. I know you haven't seen it, but it's because it doesn't, a ship will go not.
Oh yeah. Is that like with the does the ship like zooming by go with like the yellow words at the bottom of the screen, or is it like two different parts? I know it's like still Star Wars.
Well, it's just kind of throughout of all the movies, like every ship moves quickly. Okay. Where this one, every ship moves very slowly. Okay. And we get to see it come and go. It looks great. It looks fantastic. The movie, I don't think there's one bad shot of the movie. And I like how it changes. Did you pick up on kind of the differences in like cinematography at certain points?
I know there's different like framing and stuff. Like I know the like iconic shot of the guy walking through the portal thing in the spaceship with, it's like a hexagon, the guy walking through it. Mm-hmm. I know that like symmetry. I don't think I know this. Are you talking about that, or like
just kind of just like the differences in the shots, like the women walking like upside down and the guy
stuff like that. I mean, had the movie been like more entertaining, I would have probably appreciated it more, because it was a contribution. It'd be a contribution to the good storyline. But I'm just worrying about how long. What's the point of this? How long is it gonna be? Yeah. When is it gonna be over? So much that I don't even get to like, oh man, that's like a cool shot.
I think that the movie, it's draining to watch this thing for 30 minutes. At least try and get emotionally involved with these like characters, and then you have to start a whole new thing where you're now on a different ship across the galaxy, and now you gotta get accustomed to these characters. And I think that leads us into, because we don't really need to talk about the middle. We can talk about the Dawn Man and that little part before it gets to the actual astronauts on the ship next to Jupiter, because I think that was probably when I actually became, as soon as Hal was introduced,
that's when
I think the movie really gets really, really good, because it kind of builds up that Hal is like this all-knowing thing, and that it has no well, even they don't even know if it has emotion, or
no, they were questioning it at first,
because
they said they say he's not supposed to, but no one will ever know.
Yeah, which I thought was like, oh no.
Do you think, because this movie is like really accurate for how, maybe not really accurate, but ahead of its time. That's my biggest takeaway from it. I guess I'll explain it later. But do you think our computers have emotions?
All I know, Cam, is that when I talk about something and my phone is open, I get ads about that thing later. I don't think it has emotion.
It's just always listening?
Yeah. There's something going on. Is there anything I can do to stop it? Absolutely not. If anyone has any idea how to, whatever. But I think that, like you said, the movie it's hard to believe it's 1968. When you watch it, I'm thinking more towards like late 70s, early 80s. When I watch it, like it doesn't hit me that it's in the 60s. And I think like cellular, like FaceTiming people from across like space, and then AI just in general, and the way it had like AI going like bad, going rogue, was a really, in the voice of Hal is really creepy.
That's what I liked the most, even though it wasn't like this super
emotive,
dark kind of, there's nothing you can do, type of thing. I think how monotone it is, like Silence of the Lambs. He had a really like monotone voice, but I think add to the creepy eeriness of it,
and how like polite he is.
Yeah,
because it's like, especially when the main character astronaut, I don't know his name. I don't know the guy.
Yeah, I didn't care.
When he's trying to turn him off, and he's like saying stuff like, I think I deserve an answer to my question. Or it's like, I told you not to. It's like kind of creepy, because you're like, oh shoot, like he's actually mad, and he doesn't want him to be disconnected.
Yeah.
I think that whole scene after the second astronaut died, I love that shot, by the way.
At them floating?
When you see like the thing slowly move towards the astronaut that dies, and the thing, and it does boom, 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 cuts to the Hal's eye, like Hal's little...
Yeah, okay.
And then you just see a wide shot of just him floating.
Yeah.
I really liked that part. I think if you watch it in a different way, it does look a little goofy, because it's just him going...
Yeah, with context, I guess.
But I think that once that happens, and then the other astronaut goes out to get him, and the Hal won't let him back into the ship, I think that whole part, I was like really into it. But it started to make me question it a little bit, because it's just like, sit there, he looks around, he doesn't know if he can get back in, we wait with him, he finally, it's just like everything's so drawn out that it's like, just, you gotta like get it going.
I watched a couple of videos on it, and all of them, or most of them, were just like Kubrick refrained from saying like the meaning of anything, or like the ending, I guess. And I really want to understand. I mean, obviously anyone, but I just like, what was your thought process? Like, how did you get this idea?
Yeah,
even though I don't agree with it, like, where did it come from? How'd you get it?
I think it was based off a book.
Yeah,
very loosely.
Yeah, I know there was like some fixes or like some
changes. Yeah. It's very loosely based on a book.
I'm not gonna read that book, by the way.
I'm not gonna read any book. I can't.
Wonder how long that book is.
200 pages. Could you imagine? It's literally just the Dawn of Man part. But yeah, the whole part of the astronaut disconnecting him, I think it. And I watched a video. I'm not gonna take this off like I knew it, but I think people think that the alien structures are kind of a metaphor for giving the person that's around kind of an idea on how to like kill, basically, because as soon as the structure comes down, the apes touch it or kind of interact with it, they start killing the other apes.
Mm.
And then it's like, as soon as it gets on the moon or whatever, I think it's like a metaphor for what like humans will kill of it like at a certain point in evolution, and then they'll make their creations will then kill. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, because how's a creation of the humans and all that.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Because I'm sure in a couple of years we'll see more like robotic AI things like failing, and then people, if it hasn't happened already, I can't think of any off the top already, but I guess that is a good point.
Yeah. But yeah, it feels like a different movie though, doesn't it?
Yeah, because as much as we're talking about, I guess the whole thing of this movie is just like, it's
What
either
is life?
yeah, you know, it's like, what's the meaning of it? Isn't that like a thing with Siri? I think if you ask her
Who?
Siri, I think if you ask the phone, she'll just say, "What if she said this movie? What's the meaning of life?" She said this movie.
Probably. Could you imagine? Yeah, like Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick, 2001.
It's
But I think the whole point of this movie is like, it's a think piece. I mean, you can't leave without having an opinion.
yeah. Well, unless you can be like us and just
Research.
research and yeah.
But yeah,
I just don't think anybody in 1968 came out of this movie going, that meant that, that meant that. They were probably all just like,
if you weren't sober, you probably had.
Yeah.
You probably.
but like imagine like having no internet, no YouTube to watch, like you just had to watch this and just like talk with your friends or
Yeah.
just sit with your thoughts. I can't. It's crazy. And I mean, and stuff just like happens. Like stuff just happens. You know what I mean? Like when he goes through, like you said, the like loophole or wormhole.
Yeah, there's no.
It's like he goes out and then all of a sudden he's in a wormhole, and I guess that's a wormhole. I don't know if it is. I think it's more people explain it as he's getting like flushed with like information and like just because I don't think he goes through a wormhole. I think he's just kind of like trapped in like an extraterrestrial thing. I'm trying.
I get you.
I understand.
I can't have it. I read something that he was going through different universes and understanding. I guess going through different universes and then getting to a point in time where he sees himself in the future. I think that's something that I read.
Yeah.
Maybe not see himself in the future, but maybe he just aged.
Yeah, because he ends up once he goes through the whatever it is, where you see a lot of colors and very cool shapes and effects. He is in like a very British classical style bedroom, and he walks in and he's now middle aged.
Yeah.
And then he walks in and he sees an older version of himself eating dinner, and then he spills a cup or something, and then he looks at the bed and it's himself, but now on the verge of death. And at the end of his bed, he sees another pillar, another black extraterrestrial pillar, and he points at it, and then it turns him into like a space baby.
Yeah, I
like
the baby from regular show. The space.
That's probably that's definitely the inspiration for that. I didn't even think of that. That makes a lot of sense now that I think of it.
What is that? Yeah, like the baby tribe. It wasn't like 6 of them. Your regular show.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where the reference.
I've heard things like the aliens. I've heard things that room represents like now he's being observed by the aliens, and he's kind of just seeing his entire life, because now I think the extraterrestrial life is so advanced that it basically like gave him, like it gave the apes the ability to kill and stuff. I think they represent like knowledge, like they give whoever's around it like knowledge, or they give them like enlightenment or something like that. You know what I mean? I think it just gives them otherworldly, the pillars.
The pillars are giving
whoever it's around
more knowledge.
More knowledge, or just kind of like makes them see things they wouldn't normally see, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I'm freestyling here, Cam.
Okay.
I'm trying to like.
I'm trying to find any source to give me answers,
because he sees himself dying, and then he becomes a baby. I don't know if him being a space baby represents like he's now an all-knowing, like he sees
all
everything, eternal, whatever, or if it's like now he's just this super-powered baby, and now he's on his way to Earth, because the film ends with the baby in space looking on Earth, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I think some people think that he's now going back to Earth as that space baby, or he's just forever
And
reborn in space and time.
what if he turned into one of the aliens? Just like, what if
It turned him into
it turned him into a alien baby? Like he's
like one of the pillars. He's now
like he's a pillar, but like in a human body, if that makes sense. He has the knowledge of it, but
so when he's looking at the Earth, he's maybe a pillar heading towards Earth.
yeah. And then and then going back onto Earth, he could be like an actual like. Okay,
It's hard.
let me think. Hold on. What if he's going to Earth as a alien baby?
But humans see it as a pillar.
No.
Oh boy.
All right. This is all just.
Yeah.
All right. Aliens got him in space.
Yeah.
They gave him all the knowledge and whatever. To us, no. If he came down right now, he is in the form of a baby. Mm-hmm. Either he came out of a pregnant lady, or he just showed up one day. I don't know. But over time, he's just like maybe this baby's Kubrick. Like he's like really smart.
Yeah.
This is all
we have. This movie did a number on us, guys. We are really struggling to make ends meet. Stanley Kubrick, honestly, that might have been it. Stanley Kubrick was kind of a weird dude.
Yeah, I don't know.
He wasn't really a necessarily good dude. He actually, what you said, that may be it. You can take it so many different ways to where, like, you can think about it, and I don't really know. It's hard. It's hard to think. Personally, I still think the movie is. Yeah. Oh gosh. Maybe it is Stanley Kubrick. Maybe the whole movie is Stanley Kubrick. He's just this all-knowing guy.
What if he's an alien?
Yeah. What if he probably was? Honestly, he shouldn't have.
What if it was told backwards?
What, the movie?
Yeah, that didn't make any sense. But I think it probably could be told backwards if you think about it. A baby and then going reverse back to the dawn of man.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I'm sure there's a cut, a director, or Stanley Kubrick's actual cut where he did that. But
his set design. Sorry, keep going.
Well, no, we can talk about set design.
His set designs are really good because he did Clockwork Orange, which was like well known for all of its different room styles and all that. The Shining, yeah. Eyes Wide Shut. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He has like a bunch of really interesting set designs. I want to know what his house looked like. I'm pretty sure I could look up.
I don't want to be in. If I was in a house with Stanley Kubrick alone, you can have a feeling about me because I can't even imagine.
I just wonder like what type of interior designs he had going on in his own personal home. But
newspapers everywhere,
like scribble notes everywhere.
Yeah.
But I wonder like where he got his ideas from because they're all like archive, vintage type, different continent type of art, whatever.
I think from what I remember, most of his movie, at least big stream movies, are, most of them are usually from book adaptions. Mm-hmm. But what he does is he takes like kind of the thin plot of those books and kind of makes it his own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think from what I read some, he only has like 2 movies that are fully original movies that he like came up with himself, had no prior adaptation, because he did Spartacus 2, and obviously that was already way before. But the reason I think that people think Stanley Kubrick is one of the best directors of all time is probably because of just how he shoots pretty non-traditionally, if that makes sense. So like I don't know. It's hard to, like, he'll do quick zooms. He'll do quick edits to where it's like, if I'm looking at, like, a wall, he'll do, like, 3 quick shots into the wall. And it seems like he doesn't have a true style.
Yeah. I like the shot when, again, I think that might be my favorite shot, when he was going through all the colorful things at the end of the movie. And then, like, for, like, a split second, he'll show the guy's face that was all
still image, yeah.
Yeah, and, like, all distorted kind of. And
yeah, I
like that a lot.
Yeah, I really... Stuff like that where it's like I wouldn't think to do that. I don't think. Like if it was a traditional director would show literally probably like 10 seconds of that, show the guy's face as he's doing it. It does. It shows him kind of like going like, oh, like as he's going through, but then it would just like keep it at that. But we sit there, which if there was any moment in the film where it's like, oh, like why are we watching this? That was probably the best example, because it's like, okay, like we're in his shoes going through this, like seems like forever wormhole of just space, everything. But like you said, I think adding that, yeah, I don't know, it kind of like jump scares you a little bit, because you're just like, because he's like all like, he's like his face like all messed up, and he's just like, oh my god, and just like how he keeps things at like a wide shot, and he'll keep scenes going as a wide shot, and then all of a sudden he'll do this quick zoom in, or he'll do like a boom boom boom. I think stuff like that really puts him aside, and it just makes you like his style, because it is so, I think it's like a chameleon. He
adapts to like different situations.
Yeah. I was thinking of it earlier. The example I had was when Hal won't let him in, and then he finally gets into the thing, and it's for the majority of the movie it's been like locked up, like the cameras hasn't been moving a lot, but then when he's like going to disconnect the Hal, it's like shaky cam, like it's very shaky, because he has to get his suit on, because I think he killed the oxygen in the ship, so it's very shaky and everything, and I think that did a good job of making you feel like, oh crap, like this is going on, you know, he's kind of like tired because he just went through a vacuum in space to get into the ship. And yeah, this movie, dude,
it's so much to talk about, but
it's just so hard to like get a grasp on what. Imagine like sitting with, like if we had Stanley Kubrick here right now on the podcast, and I was just like, hey, Stan
the man,
just tell me what it's about. Well, one, I think he'd be coked up on drugs.
Probably have like 1 billion notes just written down just to get reference points.
He's like, oh, he brings out like a moldy, disgusting journal, and he's just like, oh, let me just like open
coke everywhere.
Yeah, and I'm just like,
coke residue.
Oh my gosh. And I mean, I give props to him for not telling a story in the traditional way. And like I said earlier, 1968.
That's like the most, I think, for any movie beyond or any movie before like or after like 220 early 2000s, like I feel like everything was like pretty traditional and standard on the way you present a film, but it is, I feel like it does take a lot of work to have an idea like this and execute it and publish it.
It takes a lot of, especially because I think this movie set the groundwork for space movies going on. You know, like Star Wars, like Star Trek, like all the things they do, I think took inspiration from this movie and how it's like portrayed. Mm-hmm. But then I say that, and I know it's different because those are more like space adventure action movies. But what they do different is they kind of not pander, but they provide more entertaining, and they break the rules of space to be more entertaining.
Yeah.
And this one doesn't do that at all. Like, I felt like I was in space, which is what the movie wants you to do. But I feel like there's a certain point where it just becomes way too much into that. You know what I mean? It kind of is like, okay, I get it. I get that the loneliness of space. Although I'm never going to space, I can actually understand it. But it's like checking my watch, going like, it's been 15 minutes and we're still doing this. I don't know. Was there anything? I guess I'll ask you, what was your favorite aspect of the movie? Was it how the whole storyline with them and him and the astronauts?
I think so. That was the most, I think when Hal got introduced into it, he brought in the most
like intriguing.
Yeah, like the thing I was most curious about. Not understanding how he worked, because I guess since we live in a time of AI, I could just kind of assume how he works anyway. But just, I knew there was a twist coming, so I was just wondering how it was going to be played out. Mm-hmm. Other than that, man,
I think it's hard to watch. Like in 2023, we're watching it and we're just like, yeah, you know, you did a good job. But like, if you were from that time and you watched that and you had there was no AI, there was no cell phones, and well, depending on how old you were, if you made it this far in 2023 and you're watching it, you're probably like, because you're like, wow, he predicted a lot of that stuff.
I will say,
now, granted, it's the idea of it was probably a subject at the time and everything, but he was the first kind of filmmaker to kind of put it to screen in a way that portrayed it in a certain way.
Like give it a visual.
Gave us expectations, really.
Okay. I think I'll change my answer. I think I guess it's not the like simple answer. My favorite thing about this movie was how advanced it was, and how like before its time it is, because you see it now. Yeah. And I was thinking about this earlier. Like you said, if you watched the movie back then, you see where we're at now. Like, I wonder what you're thinking when you first saw it the first time.
Yeah,
like, the FaceTime. That
never happened.
Yeah, like, man, how are you FaceTiming? How am I going to see you? And we're like 1,000 miles away.
When they were watching this, they weren't even sure if we were ever going to get to space. Isn't that crazy?
And then, like, wasn't a year later, we got on the moon?
And that's why, and I was talking to you before the podcast started, a lot of people think that Stanley Kubrick filmed the moon landing. And I have to say that I think the timeline does kind of beg some questions, especially because it came out in 1968. The most accurate thing of space, even today, people are saying it's one of the most accurate, except for one detail, which I'll get to after I explain this. But and then a year later, we get to space, and you can be a conspirator or whatever, but I just think that if there was a guy to do it, Stanley Kubrick would be the guy to, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I don't know. I'll have to watch more videos explaining that. But a fun fact about the movie is that when they were coming up with how Earth would look, at that point in time, I think the first picture of how Earth looked in space, from space, hadn't been taken yet. So they basically just had to guess what Earth would look like. So it was like all blue.
Yeah.
Which I thought was weird because I didn't know that. I looked that up, obviously. I didn't know that. But I think, it was 1972, I think they got the first picture. And so when I was watching it, I was like, where's the continents?
Yeah.
There's no green.
Yeah.
But it's because they just guessed and they just thought.
Pretty accurate.
It looks great. Besides that little detail, which is like being picky at that point, because he basically had to be like, well, it's blue because there's water. And
I did notice that, though, like that there was no land on it. I didn't know that there wasn't a picture of space until a couple of years after, but yeah. I didn't notice that it was something.
It always makes me wonder, like, I feel like, with Star Wars, because, they've had multiple re-editions of Star Wars to where they, like, keep adding more CGI stuff, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised they haven't gone back which I think Stanley Kubrick was a very big thing of, like, not touching his movies after they released. But I feel like that would have been a good thing to kind of maybe, like, go back and maybe add some green. Because I'm not going to lie, at the end of the movie, like, I got it was Earth, but at the first I was like, is that Earth? Because it was all blue.
Pluto. Because I guess someone could have thought it was Pluto. Isn't Pluto all blue? Or blue? But then it wouldn't make
sense. Oh, Neptune.
Okay, yeah.
Man, I don't know planets. Dude. I don't even know. I'm surprised they had it on Jupiter. I thought it would have been like on Blor or something stupid, like another galaxy. But I think, I don't know. It's so hard to pinpoint a certain topic because there's so many like metaphors and themes. But I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing that I took from it was just just humans in particular, like their evolution is, at the end of the day, no matter what they create or technology that it has, at the end of the day, like it's very fundamental behavior, like killing, selfishness, desire, like that stuff, that's going to come through no matter how evolved they become, with the apes being that metaphor about how they first began to kill, and then men's creation with AI, then they like start to kill, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think just at the end of the day,
we're all just killers.
I mean, that was a bar cam. I think just at the end of the day, we're just kind of insignificant in the grand scheme of space, if that makes sense. And I think the movie portrays that with just kind of how there's like extraterrestrial life, but it's like we never even get to the bottom of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we'll never know how deep.
Yeah, we never learn in the movie kind of how exactly what they are. We get a little bit of their capabilities, but at the end of the day, we're just kind of like dumb humans that don't, you know what I mean?
Don't understand it. I have a question. It's really off from what you just said. What's one word to describe this movie?
Oh, well, besides the easy ones like complicated and like, well, I gotta say boring.
Yeah.
I would say 2 words, but it's a single.
You put the hyphen in the middle.
Thought-provoking.
Okay.
What would you put? What would you say?
Tired. I'd say advanced,
Yeah,
or is exploratory a word?
exploratory is a word.
We'll call it a word today.
It's a new word if we just did it.
It explores different topics.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, and I can't, like, I know I've said it multiple times, but I just can't get over about how good it looks.
Mhm.
You know, because if it looks like bad, it's terrible. Movie's the worst movie of all time. It's boring. It has nothing. But the fact that it looks so good and there's so many things in it that were so revolutionary for the time and still is for how it portrays things. Just kind of in the visual things they do where they have people like walking upside down or running in a circle,
Like on the wall.
yeah, or it's just so. I think it's probably my top 5 visual movie of all time. Not story, not characters, just
look.
if I was deaf, couldn't hear, and I just had to look at something, I would want to look at this movie, you know, because it's just so beautiful to look at.
I'll give you that.
But if well, really, if I lost my hearing, I wouldn't be too far off in this movie. It's probably the best movie for those who can't hear. Don't you think so? Like, if you just had subtitles, you'd be pretty okay.
No, because
What do you mean?
if I don't have subtitles, I mean, if I have subtitles and I'm just watching it, I'm gonna see music the entire time.
I didn't even mention this. Because you had subtitles on, didn't you?
I did
And it's just silence, and it just has like
music.
music continues, music continues, music continues, and it's like yeah, but it's just like it's not even like music.
Yeah,
I thought that was funny because like as I was like kind of just staring at the TV, which I didn't mention it earlier, but like it starts off with 3 minutes of black, and my eyes I think were sending my brain signals that they were basically like, I don't know what's going on, because I started seeing like light on the TV. I thought my TV was broke.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of, I guess, just getting you into the vibe. Like, this is space. There's nothing, and it's silent, and all of a sudden, brr, and it just,
That was a great
opener.
Yeah, great sound.
Yeah. But is there anything else you have to say about this? I know we're missing so much.
There's only so much to talk about.
For the sake of time and, just our sanity.
Yeah. And my lack of knowledge on everything that there is to tell.
So yeah, Cam, do you have any closing thoughts on the movie? I know we've jumped around a little bit and everything, but for the sake of time, we will cut it out now.
I don't think so, man. Just I think this is something you have to see once just to say I've seen this movie, even though we're not bashing it, but just like they're just to have an opinion on it. Just go watch it.
Would you say that this is one of those movies everyone should watch before they die?
Yes. I think you appreciate it more once you know when it came out, and just to see like how it is in the future or up until the point you watch it, which is modern time.
Gotcha.
Yeah, go give it a watch. Do you have any closing?
I think everything I've said, obviously, I'm just going to reiterate it. I think it's one of the best movies visually of all time. I think the story, maybe I'm just a simpleton. Maybe I'm just like not smart enough to understand it, but I just think that visually and the way that it portrays itself and the themes of it were so advanced for the time that I agree with you that I think that everybody should watch this movie before they die, just to see just because it's one of those movies that kind of changed cinema forever in a way, and visual effects forever, and just space movies forever. But yeah, I think if I was to give it a rating, I'd honestly rate it 2 different ways. I'd say like as a movie, like visually and creatively, I'd give it probably a 4.5 out of 5. I think in terms of my enjoyment of the movie, like how I felt throughout, I'd probably get like a 2.5 out of 5 if I like in terms of like entertainment. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But it's like when it gets going, it's really like once it grabs you, really good.
For that small portion with how?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Because,
I'd go off the same rating as you. I like the 2 different. As far as like you said, creativity and all that, I'll probably give it a 4.5 as well, because I
could never think of the stuff.
Yeah, especially in '68, man. But I'll give it a 4.5 for that. As far as enjoyment, I'm giving it a solid 1.
Oh,
1.5, solid 1.5, solid 1.5.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think I can rewatch this. I don't think I will.
I could rewatch bits.
I'll rewatch
scenes, but some, I don't think I I don't think I could ever rewatch it fully.
Yeah.
Unless I like was on Monster. Actually, that'd be worse because I'd just be so jittery and I'm just,
Where's the action?
yeah, I'm like, what am I doing? But yeah, I think that's all I got to say.
I don't go watch it if you haven't. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed our first video. There's more to come. We're gonna do some cool stuff with the background. We're gonna do some cooler stuff with videos in general. But I hope you enjoyed our attempt to kind of think 2001: Space Odyssey out. And before I close off, I was gonna ask you, why do you think it's called 2001?
Yeah, 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I don't know if he just kind of threw a year out of a hat and just said like,
If he were,
unless it's some like biblical or sci-fi well-known year, like a predestined year of contact to aliens, maybe.
2001: A Space. Did anything happen in 2001?
Yeah, well, it happened. It was made in 1968, but I don't know if it's like he read a book that like prophesized that we would make contact with aliens in 2001. You know what I mean? But sadly, I can't talk to him because he is no longer with us. But I don't know. I just thought I'd ask you just because when you think about it, you're like, wait, why is it?
Yeah, if it were to be like a scientific-y type year, I'd just 2000.
It's a cool name.
2001.
Space Odyssey.
That's like a title of an album.
Yeah.
A Space Odyssey.
I hope Stanley Kubrick did make music because I could do that. I'd fall asleep to that music. I feel my insomnia.
I feel like it'd be like a super long song, just different type of genres and like that.
All orchestral.
Yeah.
All violins and like harps.
Yeah.
Everything. But yeah, we'll end there. I hope you guys enjoyed. We will see you next week when we review a new movie that Cam will pick. And we will see you then. This has been the Two Dudes Talk Movies podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.